What do the Leafs do once it's time for William Nylander to come back to the lineup? And did they get a fortunate break when they didn't make a particular trade last season? We'll discuss this and more on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm David Morassutti, and welcome to the Locked On Leafs podcast, your daily Maple Leafs centric podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network. I want to thank you guys all for listening and supporting the show. And back with me today, it is Frank Stanisci. I called Frank today. I said, Frank, you sick of me? He said, no. I said, okay, let's do another episode. I'm basically doing this until Frank gets sick of me, but apparently it takes a lot for that to happen. So I appreciate that, Frank.
Mike, I'll get sick of you after Mike gets back.
Okay, so once Mike's back, then we'll get.
And we'll revisit that question.
Yeah, we'll revisit that question and statement. Want to thank you all guys once again for making the Locked On Leafs podcast your first listen every day. And on today's show, it's all about potential would-be situations. What will the Leafs do in X, Y, and Z? And there was a conversation that was had today, particularly on Overdrive, but it's been on a couple of other shows too, that with the Leafs' current situation with how the lines are going right now, everyone's like, how can you break up this line? How can you break up that line? Why would you, don't split this? Everything seems to be working. The big one here is how do they deal with William Nylander when the time for him to come back? And that's been a question that's been floated around now because, again, you have so many players right now that are playing well, so many lines that seem to be working, pretty good. But Frank, this is a question only because, not because of, William Nylander and thinking he's going to mess it all up. It's just when the time comes to put him back in the lineup, should there be concern about whichever line you put him on, the chemistry, the mojo that they're on right now kind of gets disrupted?
Well, I'm going to pretend I'm thinking about that and not jump to an answer. Okay, I'm kidding you. I'm going to jump to an answer. Nylander doesn't have to earn his way back into the lineup. He's the leading scorer on the team. He's played the next guy closest to him is John Tavares, and he's played 9 less games than John Tavares. So needless to say, this guy's an offensive machine. But I think if somehow the message can be sent to him that we need you to be part of a team that works hard. Because essentially, while he was gone, what the Leafs have proven, and the positive that you're referring to about the Leafs playing really well, is they're playing like a team, not dependent on any one individual. It's everybody's in, and if a person gets an opportunity, a player gets an opportunity, you hope they cash in. So at the end of the day, it's a team aspect of the game. This, we've got to stop. And I understand why the coach wanted to do this a long time ago when he said he wanted to stop talking about the core four. The reason he wants to stop talking about the core four is because the core 19 guys that are, practicing with the team, they're what matters. It's the rest of the players that matter as well. And we have clear evidence the last few games that when this team plays like a team, they have more success. I mean, that's a no-brainer, but we're just seeing it in real time. So now when he comes back, I hope it's impressed upon him that he needs to be part of the team. We're not counting on you to rescue the team. We just want you to do your job. And when you get your chance, we know you're good enough that you're going to capitalize on the chance you got more than anybody else.
Yeah, no, I think you look at this Leafs team right now, and if I were to give my early assessment on what you do with Nylander, you put him right back where he's supposed to be on that second line with Tavares. I think you keep Matthew Nyes on that line because the guy has been playing out of his mind right now. You don't touch the first line. Matthews, McMahon, Domi, that's worked. So then it becomes what happens with Matias Michelli, because Matias Michelli has been playing well too. I think right now, if you're Craig Berube, you're having a hard time keeping Matias Michelli out of the lineup. You're going to keep him in. So it comes down to, do you break up the Robertson, Cowan line? I really like that line. They've had some good juice. They've had some good chemistry together. Does Michelli now become a fourth liner? Like that's a question that's being asked right now. And it's not, I mean, obviously Matias Michelli's played well enough that it would seem undeserved for him to go back down in the lineup in some cases. But at the same time, are you telling William Nylander you're not going to rush him back because everything is working right now? You don't feel the need to rush him back. But that conversation is going to happen soon. And if I'm Craig Berube, I'm sure he's thinking about this quite a bit, and he's trying to figure out what's the best route for him to make this work without disrupting too much in this lineup.
I guess the key, David, is the way the team's playing when Nylander's good to go. Like the point is, and I think the point that you make without saying it is that Nylander doesn't have to come until he's physically ready. They want to make sure he's healthy. They're going to go for a long run here. They're going to squeeze in a lot of games before the Olympics. It's going to be a very busy schedule at this point. So there's no need to pressure him to get back in the lineup. But as is the case with every hockey team plays hot. Every hockey team plays cold. So the pressure to put him in or the need to put him in will come when this team doesn't play that well. You're right about Michelli. And you look at Robertson, like we're seeing players that maybe you could set aside for a moment, but you can't put Robertson away. You can't. Why do you want to ruin Michelli's? He's finally figured out how to play. Some suggest at home, and the other lines, it's to your point. You're 100% right. The team's playing really well. There's no need to rush Nylander back in. When he's ready, let's see how the team's playing. Some player might play himself off the roster. And I think that's the best message about the Maple Leafs right now. If you don't play well, there's a guy that can play well. You don't need to be on the ice. We'll find somebody. We got somebody else. So that puts good accountability pressure on all the players. And Nylander is going to be one of them too. And that's what I meant at the beginning when I said he's going to have to get the message that he has to play as a team player. He's got to come back hard. He's got to go. He's got to dig. He's got to do all this stuff that a star player of character does. Not every star player does it, but a star player of character.
Yeah, and that's going to be big because I do think that you look at the lineup itself. There is a semblance of with Nylander back. I mean, look, when Nylander got hurt against Ottawa. Yeah, he was really firing on all cylinders. He was the one that was keeping this team afloat when Austin Matthews was not performing at his best. If you can get a version of this team where Austin Matthews is performing at the level he is, then you get William Nylander, who, by the way, has been among the team leaders in points. He's putting up the points, and he's going as well. And to be frank, I think John Tavares needs a little bit of a boost himself. Like Michelli's done well. I just don't know if he's done enough to really help John Tavares out. I think that's maybe where William Nylander can maybe help out a little bit more. So I do think that, yeah, you have to be cautious not to disrupt things. But at the same time, you got a player of Nylander's caliber ready to come back. You got to put him in a position to be able to, see. It's not going to be a seamless transition, but you can make it as seamless as you can.
You've got to make it work. And I don't want at this point, if I'm the coach, I don't want to touch the third and fourth line. That's crazy. Like usually the way you would think, you think the first and second line are the lines that you can't touch. But right now with Toronto and when the third and fourth lines are playing, it's hard to fool with that stuff, with those lines.
I do think that the fourth line I can be talked into if they need to make a move there. Sure. Is
Michelli the guy that you move in there?
Yeah, I mean you can move Yarncroc. I mean Yarncroc's played well, but if I had a choice between Yarncroc or Michelli, I'd probably still stick with Michelli there. Now they also say they might need another penalty killer, and that's what Yarncroc is too, right? So there is a little bit of there's a little bit of that needs to be discussed in terms of making it
what
all
a
work.
terrible problem, David. What a terrible problem.
It's
You have too
work.
many guys to put on the ice. It's terrible. I mean, if
Yeah.
you're a Leaf fan, that just oh, okay. So we have guys that can fill the lineup and spares. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, this is the team that looked like they didn't belong in the National Hockey League. They're finally starting to play like a team. They're meshed. They're doing really. It's the simple things that they're doing really well. You know, that's the thing that amazes me about this team right now is that they've bought into the simple things, which is why I made that Nylander remark. You know,
Yeah.
the simple passes, the 8-10-foot passes have been very good for them, and clearing the zone instead of a long to center ice pass from the defenseman, 2 passes to get outside the blue line. It's been working miracles, but again, now that they've done that, it's been successful. You know, videotape or recordings are used every day by teams that are going to play you tomorrow. So Philly's seeing what the Leafs are doing. We'll see what kind of antidote Philly tries putting in, and then we'll just see if maybe there's an opening for Michelli down lower in the lineup, and Nylander comes in. So it's an up and down year. All year the games go well and games go bad. They've got to be able to have solutions whenever some problem comes up. And right now they have more than enough guys to present on the ice.
Absolutely. We'll discuss a little bit more about if Nylander's back, where things currently sit with the blue line, with the lineup. Sorry, as they get set to take the Flyers. But there is a conversation I want to have. We'll save that conversation for the end of the show. Let's preview the Leafs versus Flyers game, because that is the game that is happening as the Leafs try to once again add some momentum and look to try to close the gap in the Eastern Conference. But this won't be an easy game for them to try to do that. I'll tell you why next here. The Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by Rocket Money. Let's be real, managing your finances can feel overwhelming between subscriptions you forgot about, bills that keep going up, and trying to figure out where all your money actually goes each month. It's easy to feel like you're losing control, and who has time to track every transaction or hunt down hidden fees? That's where Rocket Money comes in, the personal finance app that helps you take control. It finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow savings. The automatic transaction categorization is a game changer with this app. You can finally see where your money is going each month, set budgets, get personalized goals, insights, receive real-time alerts for large transactions, upcoming bills, and low balances. It even consolidates your checking, savings, loans, and investments into a single dashboard so you get a clear view of your entire financial picture. And look, the other thing that this app does really well is show the subscriptions you maybe did not even know you had. It shows where you can save some money, and it lets you cancel them right in the app with just a few taps. No more hunting down customer service numbers. So let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. The Locked On Leaf podcast continues here, and thank you guys for making the Locked On Leafs your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, go check out our new Everydayer Club access. It gives you access to the ad-free version of the Locked On Leafs podcast. It's compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every major podcast app. And you can go check out our members-only Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of the show. And if you want to talk a little Leafs outside of the show, give us your thoughts on the show as well, you can go and do that. Go and check that out at the Everyday Club in the description below. So the Leafs next game is on the road, so they won't have the advantage of being home. So this is the true test for this team. You've shown you can win at home. Now they got a bit of a weird schedule here where they go on the road, they're back at home, and then they start up a 3-game road trip. But 4 of the next 5 games the Leafs are going to play are going to be on the road. It starts with the Philadelphia Flyers, who this is a big game for a couple of reasons. One, Scott Lawton will finally get to play against his former team for the first time since being traded to Toronto. He did not play against Philly the last time the Leafs played them because he was out with an injury. So that's a little bit of a personal bonus for Scott Lawton. But for the Leafs, you think of the Flyers and you think of the struggles they had been through, right? With John Tortorella on the team, and they made the move to move away from him. They bring in Rick Tocchet, and just a kind of interesting situation going on in Philly there. But this is not a Philly team you take lightly. This is a Philly team that found its groove. They found ways to be competitive. They've made some pretty shrewd moves too. The Trevor Zegras move has really worked out for this team. Figures, about you give up on enough good young players, you're eventually going to have it be a noticeable benefit for you. And that's exactly what's happening right now in Philly. And look, the division situation that's going on right now in the league too. Like Philly right now is third in the Metro. They're 4 points out on first place. They've won their last 2 games in a row, but they can't be comfortable either because Washington is a point behind. Washington does have somehow 3 games. Philly has 3 games in hand of Washington. That's crazy how many games Washington's played. Pittsburgh is 2 points behind Philly. So as good as the Flyers season has been based on the expectations of when we were going to expect this team to take the next step, they can't feel too comfortable, especially going up against this Leafs team.
No, they can't feel comfortable, but one thing's for sure. They've got themselves a pretty good coach. They've made some decisions that, some might have suggested gave up on Corey Hart for obviously, reasons that may not have to do with hockey. But things have worked out for them in net, on defense, and in the forward lineup. And they play a real aggressive game. And the Leafs are going to be playing in their home. And as I said in one of the previous shows, the Leafs are playing a road game. That last game we watched, at least the first 2 periods, was a road game. Actually, I could say the third period was a road game too, because usually you want to survive when you go visit a team the first few minutes, because the team that's the home team comes at you real early. So you have to survive those first 10 minutes. And the Leafs will do that if they play as smart as they played in the last game. We're going to see. The road is a totally different beast. They've been very successful at home. On the road, not so much. That's the next step of improvement they need to make, David, in my opinion. How well they play on the road. If they want to make the playoffs, they're going to have to figure it out.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I look at this Flyers team, in the last game, Nikita Grabenkin scored, Cam York, Zegras had 2 goals. This is a Flyers team that's missed the playoffs in the last 5 years. And they kind of had been debating whether they're going to be fully in and out. They made some moves to add some draft capital. But as we've seen with a lot of these teams, eventually you get the right coaching, you get some young players starting to step up, and that's what Philly's got right now. There was a lot of talk, this season, especially with Matvei Michkov, and there was some, let's say, some not so good things going on with him in terms of his playing, his attitude, and things like that. Him and Tortorella were not always, on sync, and he's kind of been teetering a little bit in terms of the excitement that he brought last year hasn't really translated as much this year. Just 9 goals and 23 points for him this year. Zegras leading the way with 41 points in 41 games, 17 goals there. Travis Konechny, another player we know that's always gonna do well for him. But this is a Rick Tocchet style team in terms of they just got guys who are playing very responsible hockey, and that's something, when you're the Leafs, you're going up against a Flyers team like this, you got to be careful that if you're not disciplined, you're not playing within your structure, it can go against you. Now, granted, the Leafs, the last time they played the Flyers, went pretty well for them. They won that game 5-2. I believe Easton Cowan scored his first NHL goal in that game. They really took it to the Flyers. So you do feel kind of good in the sense that Leafs have already played this team. They know sort of what to expect, but we've seen it on the road. Like, this is one of the 5 games the Leafs have won on the road this year. It has not been very pretty for them.
The road, that's the key. The road. The goaltending the Leafs have had has stood up very well. On the road, it becomes more important because they usually end up a little busier. And I got to tell you, if we can, it's amazing how Carlo made a difference on this defense in the game. And if they can do this on the road, the way you look good on the road, if you're a defenseman, if nobody notices you. And that's the kind of defense the Leafs have to play. They have to play that the defense isn't noticed. The players aren't noticed. And even Riley, no glaring mistakes from him. He's pressing. We know that. From the beginning of this year, he knew what his job was, and he hasn't been able to achieve it. He's a guy that I'm hoping starts working things out and even finds a little bit of his scoring touch, because they do need him to do some scoring. Ekman Larsson has been the offensive defenseman on this team so far this year. It would be nice if they could have another defenseman that's a threat from the blue line. Stetcher's been kind of, he's been able to get the puck to the net. And that's one of the big things that Riley can't do or doesn't seem to be able to do, that he needs to improve on. Get that puck to the net. And on the road, those are the kind of goals you want. The messy ones, the greasy ones are the ones that you need to win.
Yeah, no, the Leafs do need just start playing with more confidence. Like in that third period against the Islanders, it was brought up on the broadcast. That was a team trying to play not to lose. And when you start doing that, you get into a lot of trouble. And so I think if you're the Leafs, especially, you need to, Craig Berube needs to preach that the game is 60 minutes, 3 periods. You cannot at any time take your foot off the gas. And I thought against Florida, they got a little guilty of that to start the third period. They did eventually get the empty netter. It took them a little bit of time to get that empty netter. But that's, again, where this Leafs team needs to figure that out. Oh, Frank went a little black there. I don't know if you see us, Frank. We don't see you.
Yeah, I see you. I don't know why my camera just went.
Okay, it's okay. We'll let me see if I can maybe remove and bring you back. Is that doing anything? Oh no, we may have to have you.
I'm looking to see if I can turn off the camera.
While Frank does that, just another kind of note. There we go. We got you. Oh, it might have just been your green screen, maybe. Lost you for a second there. But another thing about this game for the Leafs too, this is a game. Yes, Philly has more points than you, but I do think that this is a team that you should be able to beat, especially with Austin Matthews playing the way he is. And I think that's going to be key. Austin Matthews has to lead the charge, and the blue line needs to keep playing that simple style that worked for them pretty well in the last game. Just avoid the mistakes that are going to end up in the back of your net. And I think good things will happen in that regard. Well, we got Frank back here with a nice photo of Maple Leaf Square. Good job, Frank. Little tech support on the fly.
Yeah.
All right. On the other side, we're going to talk a little bit of trade deadline, the do's and don'ts, because fortunately for the Leafs, what they didn't do ended up being a thing that they should have done and maybe continue to think about doing. And we'll discuss what that is here next on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Locked On Leafs podcast continues here. David Morassutti, Canon Frank Stanisci, Mike DeStefano should be back next week. And I kind of teased it a little bit. Trade deadline. We haven't really talked too much about the trade deadline because, frankly, don't know where exactly the Leafs are going to fall in that right now, just because the playoffs are so wide open in the East. And that's going to be a problem right now, where you can't say for sure whether you're a buyer or a seller in this Eastern Conference. And I can't remember who I was reading a story. I was listening to something. I think it was a video even The first team that decides. Oh, yeah, Justin Bourne. Justin Bourne wrote it on sportsnet.ca. Why the first NHL teams to go into sell mode will likely win the trade deadline. Now, here's the thing. I'll say to that before we get to the Leafs. It's much easier to look like a winner when you're the seller because you're accumulating assets at a time where maybe your team isn't doing very well, and you're bringing in things and getting rid of stuff that you don't need and other teams want, and you're getting something that's going to help you going forward. But we've also seen teams constantly do this and not get better. So I always say a full-out seller, not always a great thing to be in, but a seller who gives off, they keep a nucleus, but they do sell off on, I say trim the fat a little bit. That's something that can work pretty well for teams. Now, the Leafs last season were one of those teams that were not sellers; they were buyers. Now, did they go out and buy Brad Marchand, Seth Jones? No, the Florida Panthers did that. They had tried to go and get Mikko Rantanen. That didn't work.
Marner didn't cooperate.
Marner didn't want to go to Carolina. And then trying to do the deal with Carolina because initially it was going to try to do it where it would have been a three. They were trying to make it work so that Marner would go to Carolina and the Leafs would get Rantanen. When Marner said no, the Leafs said, okay, can we do this trade where we give off other pieces? And Carolina just wasn't having it because they wanted to still contend. Very, very weird situation. But the other one we heard a lot about was the Leafs were interested in Brayden Schenn. Now, this was one of those where the St. Louis Blues were not pressing to move Brayden Schenn, which I'll kind of do a twofold in this. Why both teams, one team got, I think, a luckier break than the other. I'll start with the Leafs because the Leafs were reportedly, according to Nick Kyprios, that when the Leafs were looking at pulling a trade for Brayden Schenn, Easton Cowan was the trade chip being thrown at the Blues. But apparently the Blues were really hard on not selling on Schenn, and the deal never worked out, materialized. Frank, boy, if Brad Treliving made that trade, how do you think Leafs fans would be reacting right now?
Well, it's for me, it's not about the Leaf fans, it's about how the team would react and what you would have in the team. You got to have some inspiration from some young up and coming players. That's the way it is. You can't have a team just with veterans because usually the younger players don't get paid as much, but they can be very productive. Now, when we look at Brayden Schenn, right, the Leafs have had in the since Shanahan, since Dubas, they've gone through a lot of players of that quality, that ilk, that type of player, and it's never worked out for them for multiple reasons. The biggest reason is they're one and done. They're a couple of months in and then they're gone. Easton Cowan can be a staple on this team, and there comes a time when there's the moves you don't make that are bigger than the ones you do make, and to define the move that you're talking about with the Leafs not getting Brayden Schenn, it was the best move they didn't make. And sometimes those moves are more important than the ones you do make.
Yeah, no, it is. It is one of those things where, the trade you don't make ends up being the trade maybe that works out better for you. And I think having Easton Cowan around certainly makes the Leafs better, considering Brayden Schenn not really having a great season for St. Louis. And on the flip side for the Blues, if you found out that there was a trade on the table for Brayden Schenn where you got some pretty good assets, yes, I know he's your captain. I know he's kind of seen as the heartbeat of the team. But considering he has not played well this year, the Blues have not had a good season. That's a tough pill to swallow if you're a Blues fan, knowing that you could have had a younger, up-and-coming player with other assets, and you would trade a player that has certainly looked like he's in the decline. So that's a tough one there. That's a tough one there if you're St. Louis. Now, the cautionary tale, because there's the cautionary tale is that, well, they didn't make that move, so maybe they'll think twice about moving Easton Cowan. Well, apparently, according to Nick Kyprios, there's a little bit of trade buzz, and one idea floating around the league is a bigger swing involving the Dallas Stars, specifically Jason Robertson, Nick Robertson's brother. Jason Robertson has not exactly had a good time getting his next contract with Dallas. Playing very well this season. He has 25 goals, 52 points in 43 games. He's a guy who's had 100 points, usually hovering in the 80 mark, but he's well on his way to getting in that 90 to 100 point mark this year. Really good player. Now, this is a very complicated deal because of the contract. Now, the Leafs could obviously afford that type of contract because, they didn't pay Mitch Marner the $12 million and they were likely willing to pay Nico Rantanen that $12 million that they made that deal. So Jason Robertson could be that player that they could give that money to. But the question now becomes, what does it take on top of the contract to acquire a Jason Robertson? And Nick Kyprios brings up, Easton Cowan, Danford, and more. My problem here for two reasons. One, this is not an indictment on Jason Robertson. I think he's a phenomenal player. I think he's a player that could really help the Leafs in many ways. But you've already got a William Nylander who's that high-scoring winger. You've got, you've got a situation here where you likely have a bigger need elsewhere than you do with a winger on this team. I know they were looking for a top 6 guy to play with Matthews for the longest time. I totally get that. But I look at the way that this season has gone for John Tavares, where he's played really well. But is it too much for him to play the role he's currently playing? So if you're the Leafs, are you better off using that type of trade model and go after a center versus a winger? Or are you also better off maybe getting younger on the blue line because your blue line has been so decimated? I just don't see a scenario right now where trading, especially all these assets, now, none of those players, Easton Cowan, Ben Defford, are of the caliber of a Jason Robertson. So I'm worried about what the plus is because Leafs don't have a lot of picks either. My concern is mostly you've got bigger pressing needs. And if you're going to go out and make a deal, which I'm not on that train right now. I'm not on the train where you go and you make a deal like this right now. I think they should be patient, see how this plays out, because if you make a trade, because we've seen it, you've got a first-round pick right now that belongs to the Boston Bruins, and if you don't make the playoffs, if you are somewhere within the lottery, if you're not top 5 pick, that's a Bruins pick you just gave up in a top, in a top 15 spot. That's one thing. The other thing too, and Frank, I'm sure you're going to bring this up, I just don't see that being a reason to put your chips into a Jason Robertson trade.
Simply for me, it's this. Next year is going to be one heck of a draft. It's supposed to be one of the best drafts in a while, number one. Number two, every draft is important, and the Leafs aren't taking part in drafts to the level that they should because of doing what you're asking, making a trade. I think this is a stand-pat year for Trey Living. I think they don't need to get anybody else. And the reason I say that is because now getting somebody in the cost it'll be will just decimate any kind of future you think you're going to have. Because the future is those 18-year-olds that get drafted, the 19 and 20-year-olds that are in the farm. You can pick up guys on waivers, which is what they have to do, and get lucky, but you're not going to get a star on waivers. And it's the draft that gives you a star. And stars aren't only just the first overall pick. You can get a really good star even in the second round if you pick right, if you get lucky.
Matthew Nyes was a second round pick.
So that's why I say this is a stand-pat year. This is a year where, let's face it, most Leaf fans right now are going, I don't know if they're going to make the play. I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs. So this isn't the year where the Leafs have to worry about matching expectations of the Leaf fans. What they should do is manage the long-term good of this team this year. That's what I think they should concentrate on. It's the long-term good that matters.
Yeah.
Short-term gratification isn't going to help this team. Not in the future.
No, it does not. I think the Leafs are looking again with Treliving. It's been a little bit too much, yes, in the short term. The Tanev deal, I still think I would sign Tanev in a heartbeat. I know that people are like, second year into the deal and he's already dealing with injuries. These are very unlucky injuries too. The one that took him out, the concussion. A lot of players have dealt with similar injuries like that, concussions and whatever, neck
and
stuff,
groin injuries.
Right, groin injuries.
Yeah.
They happen. I like. This isn't a chronic thing where he's constantly had groin injuries and all of a sudden now they're coming back to bite him. Like you look at Troy Stecher, that's a player you acquired for nothing. Now, you're not always going to win those sort of deals. But why does it work with Troy Stecher? A younger defenseman than what you've brought in lately that's mobile, moves his feet, and can play the puck. I would be prioritizing that more than going to get a winger, a scoring winger, because you're third in the league right now in 5-on-5 and even strength goals. The Leafs are third in the league in that category. Offense isn't really too much of an issue. Now, we know in the playoffs it's dried up at times. That's on the players to figure that part out. I really do think that's more on the players to figure that out than management having to go out and find a winger to make this all work. If I'm the Leafs, you wait and see. See what these guys do in the interim. See if they can get themselves into a playoff spot. And then if a deal for a defenseman or a center can work out, I would consider that. I would not be looking at a Jason Robinson-like deal unless it's too hard to pass up, because you know what? The Stars are in a position right now where Jason Robinson doesn't get what he wants. There might be an open market for him too. And if I'm Jason Robertson, I'm telling the Stars that if I'm not getting what I want, now I should be careful with what I say there, because I don't know what his contract in terms of if he's a UFA or RFA at the end of this. Oh, he is an RFA, but he's an RFA with arbitration rights. So do the Stars want to go to arbitration with this? Maybe. But it could be an offer sheet situation as well. If a team really wants him, they could do
Now you're talking. That's the road the Leafs have to go down.
Yeah, the problem is the Leafs don't have the picks to do an offer sheet. That's the unfortunate part. But again, I do think, yes, the Stars have a bit of they're a bit fortunate where they Jason Robertson might just say, hey, I'm just gonna ask for a trade then if you're not gonna give me what I want and hold out. That can also happen. I just don't see a scenario where it makes sense for the Leafs right now to go and make that deal.
No,
try to make that deal, because I don't think that deal's out there right now.
I don't think so. If they're going to make a trade, they got to make a roster for roster move. For me, that's what they have to do. And any player that you bring in, even one that you may think is not significant, can be if it's the right player with the right mentality in the right situation, can be a big asset. Growing up, when I watched the Islanders begin their run of winning all these Stanley Cups, was Butch Goring. I mean, not that Butch Goring was a slouch, but he wasn't as important as people thought he was before when he was in L.A. and then he ended up on the island. Those were two different players. What the Islanders saw and they did with him was amazing, and that's what the Leafs need to do. They need to find guys that they can get them on the upside as opposed to the downside, because that's what this whole conversation started with Braden Shen. Right now, he's on the downside because of the way he's playing right now. You don't want to trade. If you're the Leafs, you don't want to trade into that situation because you can't afford it. You don't have the young guys to you don't have the young guys to help with the cap, because that's always a big deal too, right? They're really good. An Easton Cowan, his value is the cap value that he has on this team. It's not just the way he's playing. Additionally, the cap value, the amount that he doesn't earn, makes him valuable to this team. So that's a kind of asset that the Leafs have to start to respect, only because they're not in a good draft position.
Exactly. No, I think you're right, Frank. I think You look at how Easton Cowan's played. You look at Nick Robertson has played. Trust in your youth. Trust in your development and in your youth. And I think that's something the Leafs, with Brad Treliving especially, I'm not as if I'm Keith Pelley. I know he's not going to give the final say on trades all the time. I would be saying, hey, some of these young guys are doing pretty well. We're not looking to move all these guys, are we? Like, I think that conversation has to be had. It does have to be had. Well, Frank, I want to thank you once again. Maybe we'll have to bring you on for one more show. Maybe we just complete the week with you.
There you go. Thank you. I appreciate being here. I always welcome the idea of being here. I'm not tired of you yet. We'll see.
Well, that's good.
Still got a couple more days.
If anybody is tired of us, that's okay, because that will do us for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all podcasting platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on X at @the_Morassutti. Follow the show at Locked On Leafs, and you can follow Frank at Candid Frank Live. We'll be back with another episode tomorrow. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.